Everything in this story is just like so bizarre and random. She's like, you made this? And I was like, right? And people would see that it was made with just real clean ingredients. They'd be even more hyped. Fast forward to a chance brunch in Vegas with some friends of ours. And they're like, what's this chocolate milk we see on your Instagram? I tell them the whole story and the opportunity I see, but I'm just like, but I just can't figure out like how to scale it the next step. But all of a sudden they're like, by the way, we launched a VC fund and we back a few CPG companies. I was like, wait, what? So I remember going to my husband and being like, so I think I have to go to Florida. And he was like, why? And I was like, dinner with Ninja. Shortly after launch, or, about a few months ago, we actually partnered up with Steve Aoki. And like I said, we're just getting started.
Welcome to the DTC Insider podcast, where online business owners come to find actionable tips and tactics to grow their businesses. Now, here's your host, Brian Roisentul.
Hey, welcome to another episode of the DTC Insider podcast. I'm Brian Roisentul, your host, and today I'm excited to talk with Joe Weinand, co-founder of Nutcase. Hey, Joe, thanks for being on the podcast.
My pleasure. Great to be here.
Yeah, so why don't you start by introducing yourself and Nutcase?
Sure. So, as I said, I'm Joe. I'm the founder of Nutcase. Nutcase is the easiest way to explain it is a better for you Nesquik, but we basically made a cleaner adult version that's just as nostalgic, and we put it in a sexy black sim can, so it's also you can enjoy your chocolate milk and not feel childish. You don't bring it in the boardroom or to the festival or wherever you're at.
I mean, Nesquik, you took me back in time. I mean, I have little ones right now, like 5-year-old. I don't give them Nesquik because that's why you built a company, because of all the bad things it has, right? But I remember my brother as a child, he used to eat Nesquik, like the powder, it's delicious. So how did you think about this? Why did you decide to create this company in the first place?
It's always very organic to something that problem I see myself. So, similar to maybe your brother, I was a Nesquik addict, and I still remember the day pretty much where, I grew up and started reading labels, and it was just like, I cannot be drinking this shit anymore. And not to mention I wasn't feeling good after drinking it. So for the longest time, I craved it, I missed it, and I looked everywhere for a healthier alternative that I could still enjoy, and just never found one. So fast forward to COVID and lockdowns, and I was at home. You're craving that comfort. It's a tough time, and finally had just enough time to go like, I'm gonna try making this myself. So then COVID comes along, and I'm stuck at home. I'm bored, which is always kind of a recipe for disaster. But essentially, I'm craving this chocolate milk again, and that's when I finally had the time to say, I'm going to try to figure this out. So I Googled like, how do you make milk at home? And
no way,
seriously. And I was like, I know you can. I had a Vitamix, and I always just liked cashew milk best. I drink all the milks, but I've always thought cashews are such a rich, creamy nut, and it makes such a delicious base for like a milk. So I had some cashews, and I threw, some cocoa in there, some dates, and a few other things. And I really was not I was experimenting. I was messing around. I did not expect it to actually turn out good. And so I was probably more surprised than anyone when I kind of poured it out, cooled it, drank it, and I was like, oh my God, this is actually good. But then I was like, maybe I'm just losing my mind. So I actually, called a friend over, and just she came over, I gave her a cup, and I was like, drink this. And she was like, okay, and drank it. And she was like, you made this? And I was like, right? How does that work? So really like the most organic kind of thing. And then we happen to also own a restaurant here. So we were like, why don't we just throw it in bottles and put it on the shelf of the restaurant and see what happens? And essentially that's what we did. And that's where we saw it kind of like, it just flew off the shelf. And we're like, well, that's interesting. And the coolest thing was actually seeing the reaction, especially of middle-aged men coming in, and when just their faces would light up when they would see chocolate milk on the shelf. And then, when people would see that it was made with just real clean ingredients, they'd be even more hyped. So that's kind of when we were like, actually, well, that, and then other restaurants and retailers started coming into our restaurant, and they were like, hey, like, where are you getting this milk from? Like, who's your supplier? And they really, didn't realize that we were just making it in the back of the Vitamix. So essentially all of that, it was a product that I made for myself that I ended up loving, but then just seeing the response, you kind of go like, oh, maybe we're onto something. And I'm a serial entrepreneur. So like when I see something, I'm like, there might be something here. So then I dove into doing all the market analysis and this kind of stuff. And I was like, I think there's an opportunity here. So yeah, that's really how all the initial.
Wow. So it was cool that you could validate, product market fit in a controlled way from your restaurant and other restaurants as well. So what was the moment in which you saw that there was a business at scale, because I know you're not alone in this venture. You then met your 2 co-founders. Is that correct?
Yes. Or one main co-founder and then a lot of really cool partners is maybe.
Okay, great. So could you please talk about that a little bit more, please? Because I guess it's a really interesting story.
Yeah. So to be honest, because it was mid-COVID, I was like, I think, we should try scaling this. But at that time, you could not get a co-packer on the phone and like just nothing was moving. The whole world was at a standstill. So I tried and made so many phone calls and just got nowhere. So I actually, and this was like over the course of a year. So I'd actually gotten to the point where I was like, I don't know, this is not happening, and kind of just like shelved it and been like, oh, that was fun, but I don't know how it's going to happen. And then fast forward to a chance brunch in Vegas with some friends of ours. And they just happened to be like, they love startups and stuff. And they're like, what's this chocolate milk we see on your Instagram? And I was like, oh, that's just, so, I tell them the whole story and the opportunity I see, but I'm just like, but I just can't figure out like how to scale it the next step. And I knew them from poker, but all of a sudden they're like, by the way, we launched a VC fund and we back a few CPG companies. I was like, wait, wow. What? Like, that's random. And they're like, you should talk to one of our founders, Griff. He runs Mescla bars. He knows some good ops people. Maybe they can help. And I was like, oh, okay, yeah. Like, sure, awesome. I'll chat with him. Thanks. It's funny because I remember leaving that brunch and they're like, yo, if this happens, like, you have to let us in the first round. And I was like, yeah, like, of course, cool. But they make the intro. I get on that call. He introduces me to an ops guy. And then like next thing, like all of a sudden we're like deep in this. They unlock all, make all the connections that we need to get a formulation done, set up a co-packer, ingredient sourcing, all this stuff. And like, before I know it, I'm like, holy shit, like, I guess we're doing this because, you just kind of like take one step after another. And then you're like, oh, okay, this could actually work. And, true to their word, they came back. They were our, lead investors in our pre-seed round. And so that's how we got started doing R&D. And we hadn't even, this is still all pre-launch. I completely random chain of events where again, if you know poker at all, we play a lot of poker. We know Phil Hellmuth from poker is one of the biggest names in poker. And he calls me one day because he ran into a mutual friend of ours in LA, Toby, who's the founder of Shopify. And he's like, wait, you can throw that name just as random. Are you talking about the Shopify founder, Ted? Yes.
Okay. Wow.
So I because this is right. I've kind of assumed maybe I didn't mention this. So my husband is the other co-founder of Shopify, Daniel.
Okay. Didn't know that.
Yeah, Toby and him were roommates in Germany. When Toby started Shopify, he asked Daniel to come down and help him with it.
Wow.
So yeah, it's super random. And ironic, so the restaurant that we own is a German restaurant that I opened for them because they wanted German food in Ottawa. So they've, like I said, everything in this story is just like so bizarre and random. So Phil is with Toby. He's like, I finally met your buddy Toby. And we're like, cool. And they take a picture together and send it to us. And then Phil's like, we hadn't met or seen each other in a few months or whatever. So he's like, what are you up to? And I was like, oh, I have this chocolate milk. And he's like super random. And he goes, I love chocolate milk. And he's like, send me some. And I just got like the first samples. I was like, sure, yeah, I'll send you some samples. So I send it to him. He gets them. He's like, oh my God, this is so good. He's like, I love it. I want to invest. And I was like, okay. So he invests. And then he was like, I have an idea. So it just so happened that he a couple months before had played a poker game in LA with Ninja, Mr. Beast, and some other creators. Him and Ninja sat next to each other. They had this crazy viral hand that has been all over the internet. It was hilarious. But him and Ninja really hit it off. So they kept in touch. So he was like, let's send some to Ninja. And I was like, okay, sure. He immediately puts us on a group chat, and then Tyler responds right away. He's like, this looks cool. Yeah, send me some. So we send some to Tyler. He gets it. He tries it. He immediately is like, I love this. Let's talk. And I was like, oh, okay. So we get on a call, and he's kind of raving about it. And he's like, this is like, I have a massive sweet tooth, and this totally satisfied my sweet fix late at night. And it's so much healthier and cleaner. And I've been really, kind of focusing on my health journey lately. So I was just like, this is so perfect. And anyways, he was like, well, like, I'm really interested. And I'm like, in like what do you want to do? And, it became pretty clear that like he was dead serious. And I was like, okay, well, if we're going to do something, or I think even he suggests like we should meet in person and make sure like we get along. Yeah, good idea. I remember so my husband's a gamer. So I remember going to my husband and being like, so I think I have to go to Florida. And he was like, why? And I was like, dinner with Ninja. And he's like, what the hell? He was like, that's so cool. Like, what? How did that happen? I was like, Helmuth. And he was like, yeah, no, like, that's awesome. Go. He's like, can I come? I was like, no, you'll next time. This is just business. And they have met since and get along really well. But I go down to Florida. We have dinner and like instantly just click. I've always said like, it just felt like a little brother. He's only slightly younger than me, but it just like, we're just joking, talking about Pokemon and poker and whatever. To the point where like after 2 hours or something, we're like, oh shit, like we should probably actually talk about business, because we were just.
Right. Well, those are the best conversations anyway. When you meet someone, you're supposed to start talking about business, but then you start talking about life and you get along just fine. And you find out that you haven't started talking about business yet.
Yeah, exactly. So we're like, what are we doing? And he was kind of like, he's like, I'm good with whatever. And I was like, I'm like, that's awesome. Like, you're super chill. But the lawyers are going to ask for a little bit more details than that. So we just kind of like came up with something. And he was like, yeah, cool. Of course, actually getting our lawyers to agree took a lot more work. But in essence, it was just, again, such a natural and organic, easy relationship and partnership. So, and then again, this is still pre-launch. So that's where also the idea of launching it with a live stream poker game came about, because that was the one thing that tied us all together. Was like, he met Helmuth at poker. I know Helmuth from poker. So, and of course our lead backers I knew from poker, and they're involved with the Poker Go studio in Vegas, which is like the best place to stream from. So it all just made so much sense.
And besides the obvious, how do you think that this partnership changed the course of your business?
I mean, it's everything. And it gave obviously mass awareness out the gate, because he has such a massive fan base. Also gave us, it's almost like built-in credibility. People take you seriously. That said, and I will say it is a double-edged sword, because we immediately look a lot bigger than we are.
Right.
Because most of these brand partnerships happen when a brand's already really big and they just pay them a ton of money. Whereas obviously in our case, it came in as a co-founder. It's a full equity deal. We couldn't afford to pay him. He's had partnerships with Red Bull and stuff in the past. So the tricky part is like, we're still very, even now, like we're very early stages still. We don't have like massive budgets or a massive team, for instance. So we get one funny story is like, we're talking to UFC, got introduced there. And I knew we were way too small and way too early for them, but they love the product. And I remember they called me like a week before this fight at the UFC Sphere. And they're like, hey, like crazy opportunity, like the sponsor just dropped out. So there's a spot for next week. They knew I was going to the fight. And they're like, do you think Nutcase wants it? And I was just like, oh yeah, sure. Like, what's the number? Then they told me the number. I won't divulge, but it was like, yeah, guys, like that's more than we've raised to date. Like that, we don't have that kind of money. But again, just because of who was involved, they just assumed we were a lot bigger than we were. And so it's cool because it opens a lot of doors, but also some of those conversations I have to like go like, whoa, like hold up. We're not there yet, because a lot of people just
inventory management, operations, because if all of a sudden you get an influx of orders, on one hand, it's amazing, but on the other, you need to be able to fulfill that, right? So what was that internally? Like the first time that you released through this poker game and later on as well, what was, the kind of the demand that you expected versus the demand that you actually have?
So the demand out the gate was really strong. That said, it kind of like, and that's the tricky part, is like you get these spikes when you do like a big event. That said, there is a bit of a barrier to entry, especially in our case, because the economics of beverages and shipping liquids online. Shipping is super expensive. So we subsidize more than half of it, but it's still a big portion of the margin goes to just getting you the product. But because shipping's so expensive, it only makes sense to do it if you're doing a big enough pack size. That's why we sell 12 packs online. It will never make sense for us to send 4 packs. It'll cost more in shipping than the COGS, right? So that makes the economics really messy and really hard to like actually do it profitably, especially in our case where our COGS are high. But then the catch-22 with that is, okay, so we can only sell 12 packs, but you're asking people to buy a 12 pack, which is like, I mean, we actually brought the price down a little bit to just try to make it more accessible. For a 12 pack for $40 plus $5 of shipping of a product that you have no idea what, like if you've never had cashew milk, you don't really know what to expect from it. It's a lot. It's a big ask. And that's the inherent challenge of beverage and D2C, is that it's a big hurdle. Now, on the flip side, once you're in retail and people can try single cans and they know they like it, then that might help each other. But at the same time, if you're trying to start on D2C to build the brand. So yeah, everything's a bit of a catch-22 in this world. And what I will say is it's still good for brand awareness. And it was good. I mean, we wanted the product to be accessible to anybody across the country because we had someone like Ninja. So for us, we're like, we have to start e-com and then we can back into retail. But this goes back to kind of a comment you made about your brother eating the powder. So that's the format I also consumed it in most as a kid, was the powder and mixing it with the milk. Now we launched the RTD first, but then you start to see the economics of D2C. And I mean, every brand's kind of doing this. You kind of go, oh, maybe a powder format would actually be better for online. So that's actually something we're working on right now that I'm really pumped about. That's one move that a lot of beverage brands do is focus on the powder for online and then the RTD or the liquid for
Did you launch in retail yet?
We just have like a few regional accounts that we're testing in. So we're based out of Vegas. So we have a regional gas station chain called Terrible's that has about 150 location that we just launched at. We're also at Live Beach at Fontainebleau on the Strip and talking to all the other casinos as well. So initially, obviously focusing on our home state, and then growing.
I want to ask you something. Where do you what do you see like the brand positioning, because it's something anyone could drink, of course, without any positioning, right? Everyone likes that. I mean, people who doesn't like that, it's okay, but there are many people who like this. So what do you think about that when you put into the mix, like linking it to a poker game, linking it to, UFC, of course, that deal didn't happen, but what do you see about the positioning versus doing things like, could you position these in like everywhere you can, or could you choose like, okay, I don't want this to be only a poker thing or only a UFC thing. I want this to be more, for some other kind of people. I don't know. Have you thought about that?
Yeah, we definitely aren't focused on just the poker world. That's just an organic first step. But in terms of partners, we are expanding that. So I'm fast forward to shortly after launch, or at about a few months ago, we actually partnered up with Steve Aoki, who ironically we met him also through poker, and we've become good friends. But what was funny is when I first sent him the chocolate to try, he was very honest, and I appreciate that about him. He was like, it's not really my thing. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. Obviously I was kind of bummed in the moment, but I was like, I respect it that he was honest. But then maybe because I'm crazy, I'm like, well, I'll send him the strawberry once we released or had samples of the strawberry. So and we were actually with him when he tried it the first time. And he was just like, this is it. This is my jam. And, it just so happened that he was more into strawberry milk. And ironically, what I didn't realize as well was there's so many variations of strawberry flavor. I didn't even realize before how broad it could be. But the one that we chose, when he tasted it, he's like, this is super nostalgic for me because it reminded him of the strawberry poke sticks, those like bread or like candy sticks, whatever.
Yeah.
So what he was saying is like, this is a very Japanese strawberry. So he was like, this, to him, it was like super nostalgic. So that was cool. So, based on that, he's like, now I'm in. So we brought him on to like be kind of a partner ambassador and to kind of be like the strawberry, to help with the strawberry launch. So we did another poker game for that. And he has been kind of the one that we associate with strawberry. So that, that brings us into the music EDM world. And we're talking to a couple more partners, one more that I can't announce yet, but another one in the gaming world. But as you know, Ninja's very much in Fortnite, but there's obviously all sorts of different games, and there's different personalities in each of those worlds. So we're just working on announcing our next big gaming partner. And like I said, we're just getting started. So for sure, like, it'd be great to have a partner in the sports world as well, like an NBA or an NFL player. So to be honest, those agents are reaching out to us a lot. So we're just having those conversations and trying to find the right fit.
Some people I interviewed here in the podcast, they have been on Shark Tank. And I know, and correct me if I'm wrong, but based on what we have been discussing previously, I understand that you are, about to be featured in a show, but it's like Shark Tank, but with a lot of differences, and it's on X. So could you please explain that for the audience to understand a little bit more?
Yes, yeah. This is probably the most exciting and unconventional thing, I guess, that we're doing. I was approached, and Nutcase was selected to be featured on a show, a new series, groundbreaking new show called Going Public. Essentially, the easiest way to explain it is like Shark Tank meets Apprentice, except it's the viewers that can invest. While the show airs, you build a wait list, and then on the finale, you actually open up a round of equity crowdfunding. So you're letting the audience actually eventually buy a piece of the company. So that's when I, heard about the concept, I just thought it was awesome. So it's funny because at the same time, I love the concept. And then around that same time, they had just signed a deal with X. So they're like, X is going to massively promote it and stream it because X just started releasing their own original content. And the CEO of X, Linda Yaccarino, like personally greenlit the show because she loved it. And she was super keen on having a female founder featured. So it's kind of like all the stars were just aligning. And I was like, this is such a cool opportunity. But I was like, I hate being on camera. Like, I have no aspiration to be on this show. But of course, again, this is one of those moments where as a founder, you're just like, you got to do what you got to do for the company. So I was like, suck it up. And I did more on the team. I was like, look, as soon as I know the camera's rolling, I get super awkward. And they're like, you'll be fine. We'll edit it. And I was like, okay, sure. But yeah, we ended up doing 5 or 6 like full-on production days, which I've never done with like a full like proper production crew and whatnot. We did a couple days with Ninja, and they just put this whole, and basically like they follow our story, but then they also throw in challenges. And then there's also like an undercover part where they have this VC hiding that we did. Like, she pretends to be a reporter, but it's actually a VC. So like it's super highly produced, like high production quality, and a lot of different things going on. The whole first episode is focused on Nutcase, and that actually, so it just dropped last Tuesday, exactly a week ago on X.
How many episodes are there?
So the series follows 3 startups. And so each of the first 3 episodes kind of focuses on one of the companies. So we were episode 1 and there's a different company. And then episode 4 brings all 3 founders together. And then that all culminates to a live stream finale. Yeah, so far just our episode 1 just dropped. Episode 2 just dropped today. Episode 1 alone has already done over 20 million views on X.
Wow.
Which is crazy. And so that's where like the exposure comes in of like, okay, that's going to massively help with brand awareness, and then help us as we start to get into retail conversations with retail to be like, okay, well, at least this brand should be more recognizable now. And of course, there's been a lot of investor interest. And yeah, it's really, I love innovative things, and like the way X is trying to push content and the tools they have at their disposal, the audience they have at their disposal. And yeah, it's been a really cool experience so far. And we're just getting started, because I mean, more people watch it every day. So in the next few months, it should be interesting to see like what impact it has and what comes out of it.
Well, this is amazing. Congrats. And first off, going back to what you were saying about, not wanting to, or go or not being comfortable with, being in front of a camera. First off, I think you did great. I'll watch the episode, but even like watching you here, how you speak and how you explain, I can tell you're passionate about what you do. And as a founder, we always discuss here, when we talk about producing founder the content these days is needed even more when you need to be scrappy and need to get the word out there. If you truly believe that you have something great to offer to consumers, well, why not screaming it out loud, right? So that's what we need to do. Of course, it's easier said than done. But so not to spoil anything, even though some people listening might have watched 1 or 2 or 3 episodes when this podcast airs. But what's the dynamic? Because I didn't get that quite well. First off, I understood that there's 1 episode for each company, one of the 3 companies, but it's not like a Shark Tank episode in which there's a panel and then you pitch the product, or is it?
No, it's more docuseries meets like little challenges. So this won't spill the whole show, but like for one of the shoots, we went out with Ninja in the desert and we were, shooting things and blowing things up. But while they brought out investors to like quiz us at the same time, and ask questions. And, they also filmed a poker game where I said like we didn't know, but there was an undercover VC that interviewed us before. So, we're thinking we're just like answering questions for this like new reporter, but turns out like she's this like super high power VC and you're like, oh fuck. So more entertainment docuseries / a little bit of reality TV mixed in. So yeah, more, and that's where I mean like more like Apprentice in that sense, where there's challenges and whatnot. Hard to describe, but yeah, definitely more interactive and more engaging than just like stand up and pitch kind of thing.
And one question I have, changing subjects for a little bit, online marketing. I know it's expensive. I know it's tough, not only like for every brand out there, but given the fact that you are in a partnership with Ninja and a massive audience and expertise, like being an influencer. So are you thinking about leveraging influencers to spread the word online through organic content or ads or in some other way for Nutcase?
Yeah. So I think, like you touched on, it's gotten really, ad spend on Meta and this kind of stuff, it's gotten really expensive and it's gotten really hard to maintain positive ROAS. So we experimented with that a little bit and just couldn't really get it sustainable, like especially as I mentioned with the margins that we have in beverage, it was brutal. So essentially we've pivoted from that to being like, you know what, let's just try to make as much fucking noise as we can and get noticed that way. So of course Ninja's really good at that. He's made some hilarious content, some memeable stuff. So we just let him go nuts with it. And then things like the poker streams and the show on X, and just like I think the one thing I'm probably best at as a founder is just finding unique ways to get in front of the right people and get them excited about it, and then have them share it with the world. So that's essentially what we're focusing on right now is kind of trying to, again, leaning into being different. That literally it's called Nutcase. So I think we double down on that and just try to get attention as a brand. And I mean, and it ends up being on brand because we're being true to ourselves.
Amazing. So looking ahead, what are your goals, for Nutcase in, let's say, in 2025, 2026, and how you plan to achieve them, more or less like high level?
Yeah. So, I mean, I kind of leaked that we're working on a powder version. So assuming we nail that, then that will kind of shift the focus of D2C on that, which we're really excited about. And then parallel to that, for the beverages are, as the exposure from the show comes through, we're hoping that gives us the right leverage to then be able to go to the right big national retailer and talk about that, because we have a lot of people online just being like, where can I buy it in store kind of thing. And we're just making sure that we're ready for it. And I think, after this, we'll be in a better position to do so, because you need a lot of brand awareness, because the worst thing, you don't want to get on the shelf and then it doesn't move. So we want to make sure that we're smart. And, a lot of brands, even creator brands, jump in too quick, and they either can't keep up with the scale, or the brand awareness just isn't there and it sits on the shelf. And that's the worst possible scenario.
Yeah. I talked to too many brands on these podcasts, over 200, I would say. It's amazing the stories that you hear, about that, the good, the bad, and the ugly, about going, I don't know, Walmart, nationwide, Target, Whole Foods, depending on the category and the vertical, right? And yeah, one is the demand, and the other one is that there's a misconception. Apparently, I didn't know, right? But apparently there's a misconception, or so they say, that as a brand, of course, as you said, you need to create your own demand when you sell in retail. It's many brands like launch in retail hoping that people will go and find their products and buy it, and probably they don't have what they have, online. Even if they have a huge presence online, it's not the same as what you get, offline at the shelf. You have like many competitors. The only thing that talks about your brand is the packaging. In this case, the can, right? Yeah. So you have that to sell whatever you want to sell among many other similar products, right? So it's definitely different. One brand, they are doing 9 figures now, that I interviewed 2 years ago. They recently said something like they are doing in DTC, like they think of DTC currently as the lab. So they test stuff, new products and new concepts. But in retail, they have the products people want to see, the products they know, and like the hero products, right?
Smart, yeah, for sure. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Well, I had a really interesting time. I learned a lot. I loved all of your stories. And before you go, I wanted to ask you something I like asking every guest that comes on the podcast. If you have a book that, I don't know, that's top of mind for you right now that you love and you want to share with the audience, we put together a list of books every single year. Yeah, I wanted to ask you if you have any to mention that you can think of. Yeah,
so I love reading, and I am obsessed with like founder biographies. So any book that talks about, a builder or an entrepreneur, I just eat up. And ironically, because we have a show on X now, but I recently dove into the Elon biography, and I swear to God, I couldn't read like a chapter without being like, fuck, what am I doing? You think you're doing okay, and then you read that and you're just like, fuck, I need to like think bigger. And it just got me so fired up all the time. And I know he's a polarizing guy right now, but think what you want of him. The way he keeps pushing and just fucking goes for it, especially with, our brand, that's kind of our ethos, is about like, so we have a great video of Ninja that we made as a campaign that we want to do more of, is essentially like, it starts with him kind of saying like, they told me I was crazy for thinking I could play video games for a living kind of thing. And it's kind of like, then he's like, well, look at me now kind of thing. So that's really the whole vibe of the brand, is kind of like, and I was always one of those kids that was just doing crazy shit, and people were like, oh my God, like chill out, like what are you doing? So we really want people to lean into like the be different, be you, don't give a shit what anybody thinks, don't let them stop you, do your thing, and like just be a nutcase and own it. And yeah, anyway, that book to me, I was like, this guy is obviously the epitome of that. He just doesn't give a fuck. He's just gonna go for it, even at the most insane ideas. And it actually gave me an idea for a marketing stunt that we're gonna pull soon on X with their help. So stay tuned for that.
So about that, I was listening to, I don't know if you listened to the Mr. Beast podcast episode, the Diary of a CEO with Stephen Burnett.
I did, yes, love that.
Such an amazing founder, such an amazing creator, such an amazing, person, and I learned so much about that guy that I didn't know. And one of the things that got my attention is that he said, everyone thinks I'm a genius now, but back then when I was at the age of 11, trying to be a YouTuber and record videos and spending, 12 hours a day with my friends, everyone called me crazy and nerd, or I don't remember his exact words. So yeah, to your point, if you are in the audience or have a kid in the and they are following their passion, just encourage them. I know it's easy to say it, but yeah, let them follow their passion. As long as they are going all in and doing it the right way. Yeah, it's a good thing to do.
Hell yeah.
Okay, so before you go, why don't you tell the audience where they can go to learn more about you and Nutcase?
The best place currently still is drinknutcase.com. Obviously, we're trying to build our audience there. You can also, if you have X, you can find the show at Nutcase Milk. And yeah, and don't be shy to DM, reach out if you have any questions or messages. There's also information on the equity crowdfunding round on our website. There's a little tab that says invest. So that's also really cool because, we touched on how to make an impact at retail. So the one thing that's really interesting with these equity crowdfunding rounds is that, people talk about having ambassadors and this kind of stuff. But in this case, we're building essentially an army of fans that actually has skin in the game. So that's where I'm like, this is what I'm probably most excited about, is having this insanely engaged fan base that once we get into retail, we're able to share with them and say like, hey guys, like, let's all go nuts. Like we need you now to like everybody hit up Target or Walmart or wherever we end up, Costco. So that to me is really cool. And that's where that's the future is, making your fans owners and activating them and building it with them.
Well, thank you, Joe. And thank you, if you are there in the audience, first, thank you for listening this far. And second, if you want to, find the links, the website, X handle, and every other social media that you're present on, please go to the DTCinsider.com. And once you find the episode, you will see all the show notes, including the book and including the social media handles on the website. Joe, once again, it was a pleasure having you here. Thank you.
Pleasure's all mine. Thanks, Brian.
This episode was brought to you by BSR Digital. We help DTC brands grow through paid ads and email marketing campaigns. If you'd like us to help your business grow, head on over to bsrdigital.com and schedule a call with us.